Welcome to the Scrutineers series. I'm Emily Levy, founder and director of Scrutineers.org. I'm delighted to be collaborating with whowhatwhy.org to introduce a series of election protection podcasts designed to help you understand the risk to our elections, from voter suppression to lack of security. We'll be talking about what you can do to protect the voters and protect the votes. We're training a fairness force to help make sure no one stops you from voting and all votes are counted accurately. Today, I'm excited to welcome Deepak Puri, who's an engineer and Silicon Valley veteran and co-founder of Democracy Labs, which works with progressive groups and campaigns. Dem Labs engages with organizations around the country to understand their needs and identify where better technology could enable them to do more with less money. So Dem Labs is a nonprofit group that cuts the time and cost needed to implement solutions. And what they do is they use existing free and affordable apps instead of developing new software. They freely share the details of the apps used and how to use them so that other groups can also benefit from them. And they've got some exciting stuff coming up in relation to the election. Welcome, Deepak. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks, Emily. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to get to share what you're doing with our audience. So will you talk to them about CISA 2020, why it exists, and what it is?
Oh, great. So what had happened was during the midterm elections, people started contacting us and saying a lot of voters are facing problems, but it's really hard for them to draw attention to what's going on. And it has to be done quickly in order to make a difference.
What kinds of problems do you mean?
Oh, I meant, so some of the problems by which they could report a problem and we could help direct it to people who could make a difference. And we wanted to supplement, there's a whole bunch of wonderful resources out there, including the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, who have all kinds of resources. So we wanted to kind of supplement that with other ways. So we included the hotline number, but in addition to that, we worked with a group, Samantha Bee, who has her own TV program, and a group called the OSED Institute and NBC. And through that, we were able to collect instances of problems and share them quickly after they'd been vetted with the people who could make a difference.
Great. So one difference between this and the 866 Our Vote hotline or the VII Spanish language hotline is that with those systems, people can make reports and they go into that system, but there's not a public-facing interface where people who want to know, has this incident already been reported, could find that out, or that kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So that's a piece that you're adding as a way for the public to see where the problems are.
Right, and it's important that people's privacy be protected. So if people go to our website, thedemlabs.org, they can see a map of the instances where trouble happened in 2018. But what we've done by design is make sure that the contact details of the person who reported that incident aren't public.
So important.
Yep, but we work with voting rights groups and other people who need the information later. And with the person's permission, we shared that with other folks who need it later.
I am so excited to hear that. As somebody who's been an election protection advocate since back in 2004, I have actually had quite a bit of frustration with that Lawyers Committee hotline that we've mentioned already, that even though when people submit complaints to them, they sign a release saying that their information can be shared with other groups for the purposes of pursuing their complaint, the organization has declined to share that information when we've needed it for lawsuits or to otherwise pursue problems that have happened. So I'm really, really excited to hear that you are taking a different position on that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is a crowdsourced resource which belongs to the public. Obviously, we want to protect people's privacy, and we make it clear on a disclosure statement when people submit a form. But this information, because what we've heard from people is, if you could go back and see where voter suppression happened in the past, it is valuable information to project where it might happen in the future. But in order to do that, you need to have data from the past. Mm-hmm. And that is what we try and serve.
Great. So who are you hoping will use this tool in this election?
So in this election, we want to have as many people as possible report instances that they face that prevent them from voting. That's one. We also have other groups who are, say, for instance, they want to monitor the election process. They might be collecting poll tapes, and they want to use that for making sure things go properly. So to answer your question, we want as many people as possible to be aware of the app, and then they can submit information. The one thing which I do want to share is, although I call it an app, it's really a link, so you don't have to install anything. If you simply go to www.say2020.com, it'll take you to the form. And CSAY, as you probably guessed, is an abbreviation of see something, say something.
Great. So that's where someone would go, www.csay2020.com, to report a problem. They would go, if they want to see the 2018 incident map, they'd go to thedemlabs.org. And what if they want to see the 2020 map? Where would they go?
What we've done is, right in that form, at the top, we have a link which shows them the incidents which have been reported.
Great.
So
So it's the same link for both.
Correct.
And so you mentioned using it for collecting poll tapes. So will you talk a little bit about, we've talked about it before on this podcast, but since not everyone hears every episode, will you explain what that project is and how it connects with what you're doing?
Absolutely. So before I go there, let me just kind of give you some background.
Okay.
So the CSAY form has the ability to report issues, like, what kind of problem. We've added a new category for poll tape. People can then add other information like time and date where they took the picture. But CSAY by itself has a built-in function, so you can attach a photo or a video. That's always been in there. And now whether you take a picture of people intimidating voters at a polling place, or you take a picture of a poll tape, the program doesn't care. It's just an attachment. So,
great.
Makes sense?
So let's talk about what is a poll tape and why people take pictures of them.
Oh, perfect. So with that as background, so what happens is, I'm not a legal expert, nor am I an election official, but to my understanding, and correct me if I go wrong here, Emily, is different polling places, typically by law, have to produce a tape, and that tape is the count of how many ballots were cast, how many were counted, and so on, by individual location. So let
me actually add a couple of things to that. It's actually by individual voting machine or scanner that counts paper ballots, and it includes not only how many total ballots were cast, but how many for each candidate, and how many in the case of questions, propositions, levies, whatever they're called where you live, on the ballot, how many yes votes and how many no votes.
Right. Thanks for elaborating on that. So now these tapes, they're literally like, think of it almost as a receipt you'd get from a cash register. They're meant to be displayed publicly so anyone can take a look at it, take a photo of it, and this is public information. And then what happens is these individual locations send the results to a central place where they're tabulated. So for instance, there might be 50 machines and they all go to the mothership where they're added up. Now, the problem is, or the potential problem is, some tapes aren't uploaded, maybe the count is wrong, maybe there's a malfunction somewhere, and as a result, what the Central Tabulating Center reports is one number, but it sure would be handy to be able to add up the tapes from the individual machines to see if there was some problem that occurred in the process. So that's the problem which a lot of groups are focusing on, because everyone wants to make sure that the count is properly done.
Thank you for describing that. And it is one of the projects that Scrutineers is working on in cooperation with a few different organizations, including now CSA 2020, to encourage people all around the country to go to polling places on election night after the polls close and either take photo or video of the poll tapes and upload them to CSA 2020, and also there's a couple of other places that they can be uploaded, so there's some redundancy in the system. And it's something that people can do in just a few minutes that can make a really big difference, because it's one of the main tools we have to catch incorrect election results, whether they're a result of error or whether they're a result of malicious, of malware, malicious activity, impacting the counting of the votes. So it's a really important thing and a relatively easy thing for people to learn how to do and to go do in a small amount of time.
Right. And so what we had done recently on our website, we had put out a blog which says, "Take a bite out of vote counting crime." And what it does is it literally explains anyone with a smartphone can take a picture of a poll tape and they submit it through CSA, and it could be one photo, could be 20 photos, it doesn't matter. Those photos are automatically uploaded to the cloud, but before you can add them, that image has to be kind of converted into a digital form.
Right.
So what we had done was we found this solution which is called Pen to Print, and it's on our website. It's spelled pen, P-E-N, to T-O, print. And this is a free application that you can find on the Apple Store or the Android Store. And what it does is you simply take a picture or you point your camera at the poll tape, and it goes ahead and digitizes it for you automatically. And then all you have to do is take the text and post it into a spreadsheet. So our goal is, how do we make this simple and easy? So if you have 50 volunteers, they could all be scanning tapes and quickly develop a total. And so that's where that app comes in handy.
So that's something you've incorporated into CSA. It's not something people have to run themselves before uploading the pictures of the poll tapes, right?
Correct. So what we recommend is, you might have, scrutineers may have 50, 100, 500 volunteers who are taking pictures. All of those pictures are automatically uploaded, and then so the individuals don't have to worry about scanning it because they're busily taking pictures, and some of these polling places only put them up for a limited amount of time. So taking the picture and uploading it could be done by a volunteer, and on the back end, you could have other volunteers who use this free app to digitize it and develop totals. Now, any questions on that so far?
No, I think it's fantastic, and I love how you're taking existing software that's out there and putting it together in a way that may be relatively simple for you, but never would have occurred to me that these capabilities could be available to groups around the country working to protect the elections. I think it's a tremendous tool. So we've talked about how if somebody is having a problem when they go to vote, and I assume this is whether it's early voting or on election day or voting by mail, absentee, that they can report the problem that they're having so that it can be collected with other problems and we can see where action needs to be taken. We've talked about how the tool can be used by people who are photographing or taking video of poll tapes. What about how the tool can be used by legal volunteers and by the media? How would you like to see them using CSA 2020?
So during the midterms, one of the things that we realized was, like everything in life, there's bad actors, and so there's people who will intentionally try and gum up the works by putting in bad information, spam, and so on. So although something is reported, we first have a step which kind of filters out irrelevant information. And then what happens is the information that's been collected, there's a purpose to it. And we kind of think of it in 3 or 4 ways. One is the public should know about it. This is what's going on. Second, we want to create alerts. And what better way, like during the midterms, we worked with Samantha Bee, and she has a program called It's Not a Game, but it's really an app. And so what she was doing, when we reported instances that were egregious, like I'll give you an example. Please. In this one town in Mississippi, the police, bless their heart, had put up barricades around a polling location. No one knew why it was going on, but no one could get to the polling place. So someone reported it, and sure enough, within a few minutes, Samantha Bee had tweeted this out. Hey guys, what are you doing? What are these barricades for? And that created enough attention that sure enough, within 30 minutes, those barricades had been removed. And which was important because the point I want to kind of emphasize is you have a large group of people equipped with reporting problems. And it's more curated than just putting it out on Twitter and Facebook because we're listening specifically for what people are reporting. Mm-hmm. Second, we're validating it. We have teams of volunteers who can, in real time, screen this stuff, make sure it's correct. And finally, we take that information and give it to, in this case, a media source who can then report it and take action on it. So the whole thing is trying to compress the time by which people can report an issue until an action is taken. Because if it happens a week later, a month later, or something, it's not that effective. So,
right.
Go ahead.
No, I completely agree with you. I think one of the things that's been really challenging with some of the election protection work is things happen afterwards. We discover problems after the election, and while they may call the results into question in some cases, there are very limited avenues available to deal with that after the election. So if you can find out that there's a problem that's preventing people from voting during an election, often there are things that can be done about it that can allow more people to vote. So that's hugely important.
So I'll come back. So I want to make an important point here. In addition to media sources, this time around, we're also working with social media influencers. We announced something with the Black American Musicians Association.
Great.
We also work with different voting rights groups and legal groups. The idea is when we want to provide this information in a curated form to people and organizations who can help ensure fair elections and making sure no one gets suppressed voting-wise. But what's a really interesting thing about this is not software we developed. Absolutely not. It comes from a company called ESRI, ESRI. And what many people don't realize, I'll give you a real world example. There's an application which many of your readers or listeners might be aware of called Waze, W-A-Z-E. And this application is one that if you're driving along and you see a pothole or you see a traffic accident, you can immediately pull out your phone and report it on Waze. And what happens is the drivers who are behind you get notified right away that watch out for this pothole or take this detour. And that might sound like a very trivial application, but it really isn't. Because when you think about it, you have millions of drivers across the US driving all over the place. They're reporting problems, but that information is collected, categorized, and then shared with the drivers behind you in a few seconds. And that is a lot of sophisticated processing power. So what we did was the technology behind Waze, which collects information and makes it more meaningful. We set about thinking, if you could do it for traffic, at the end of the day, elections and voting are even more important. But now you have millions of voters, going off and voting. Some of them are going to get face hassles. How could we apply the same technology which already exists to serve a good purpose? And that's where CSAY came about. So the technology has been around for over a decade. We're just applying it for a good cause.
Fantastic. So people, I assume, since you're working with so many different organizations, are going to start seeing information about it being circulated everywhere. I know I haven't seen much yet about it. Like it's not coming across my Twitter feed, for example, very much yet. Is that something, do you have a big push that's going to be going on to let people know about it? I mean, people are already voting all over the country, so.
So we are in the process of rolling it out. Like last night, Jennifer Cohn, who has a large following on Twitter, she shared the information about CSAY.
Great,
and
that will
we're
help.
hoping that your listeners and other folks who are listening to this will help spread the word, because the more people who know about it, the better quality and more comprehensive data we get. And so that's our goal, to kind of help spread the word.
And so how would you like folks listening to this to spread the word now? Do you have particular content that you'd like them to share on social media from your website, or do you want them to just write about it and send the link? Or I imagine people hearing about this will want to share it with others.
So there's 3 ways they can do it. There's the URL, which is csay2020.com. There's also a Twitter handle at csay2020, and same thing on Instagram at csay2020. So if they could share that with people, we have a media folder which has assets that people can take, which include images, sample posts, and even videos. So any way they want to do it is,
do you want to give a link to that, or how would people find that?
How about if I shared that?
We can put it in the show notes if you.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay, great. That sounds great. And one other question I have is, if someone is trying to vote and they're having difficulty, would you recommend that they do a report both to CSAY 2020 and to the other hotlines, or is that going to confuse things because it won't be clear? Is it 2 separate incidents or the same incident reported in 2 places?
What we do is we share the link or the phone number for the legal hotline on the form itself. So in case it's something urgent and they want to get legal help, they should call the hotline. In addition, they can determine if it's not urgent or they want to kind of share it through other sources, they can also use the form. So the best thing would be to probably put it in both places. Okay,
great. So if people are having trouble voting, we would like them to report it both at the 866-hour vote hotline or VII hotline, which you have listed on your form, and at csay2020.com. Okay, fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like people to know about this exciting and really, really important project you're doing?
No, anything people can do to help spread the word, we would welcome. The main thing is the data that we're collecting is a resource that belongs to us all. DemLabs is not trying to keep this proprietary, because the more we know about the things which are preventing fair voting, the faster and more comprehensive the response can be. And that is the whole goal behind the project. It's a totally non-for-profit project, and we would welcome any help in promoting it. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you so much. My guest today has been Deepak Puri from the demlabs.org, talking about the CSAE 2020 tool for collecting information about problems people have voting. I encourage you to check it out. And also, if you have not yet figured out what beyond voting, in addition to voting, you're going to be doing to help protect the elections this year, I encourage you to come over to Scrutineers.org. We've got a lot of stuff going on, lots of ways that you can participate from home, out in your community with a small amount of time, or if you can dedicate days or weeks to it, there's a place for you. Hope to see you there. Thank you again, Deepak, for your work and for being here with us today.
Thank you, Emily. Take care.
You can find rough transcripts of each episode at whowhatwhy.org/podcast. You're invited to get involved in the election protection movement by joining Scrutineers at Scrutineers.org. That's SCRUTINEERS.org. Whether you're a seasoned activist or advocate or have never before worked for social justice, you are welcome. Both Who, What, Why and Scrutineers depend on your support to keep our work going. If you appreciate what we do, please donate through our websites. You'll find Who, What, Why at whowhatwhy.org/donate. Remember to check your voter registration and help others do the same. And vote in every election. Thanks for listening.